Welcome back to Razmafsar TV. I'm really happy to have Alex Spreier and Sean Mueller today from United States, Oregon, state of Oregon. And we are going to talk about another aspects of martial arts and European martial arts or Western martial arts. Hi, gentlemen. How are you?
Hi, Dr. Corsani. Doing really well.
Fantastic.
And I think I can speak for both of us that it's really an honor, as we were saying, to be on this side of the camera. We've been watching all of your interviews throughout the pandemic, and
Big fan.
it's a little bit starstruck to be on this side of it.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to have you. It's always a good idea, great idea to have different views, as many viewers said it as well, and to have different views. And for all of us is a way to improve, to learn from each other. And this is the best medium. And pandemic showed us actually, at least to me, that this is actually somehow better than an event, not better, but because we can really concentrate on people and then distribute it worldwide. Because when we go to an event, 10, 20 people come and, or, in your event, in your workshop, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
But this is a very good way, right?
Well, it's actually really cool. In a way, the pandemic brought my school, Mike Sherba, who you've had on his school, Jim Emmons, his school. The three of us are really good friends. We've trained together for years, but in a way, it kind of brought the three of us together into more of a collective situation as opposed to being three distinct schools, because we were doing video chats with each other for different things. So it'd pop over to me to teach a lesson on a weekend, and then Mike would be teaching a lesson one weekend, and then Jim, and so
have a history lesson one week.
Yeah,
or something.
Yeah. Jim did a couple lectures, and so it was that silver lining on the pandemic was that in a lot of ways, I think we all grew as martial artists because we got to work on things that we didn't know we needed to until we had to.
Yes, absolutely. Could you please introduce yourself to us, both of you? I start with you. Please go ahead and tell us a bit about your background, who you are, what you do.
Yeah, so I am a kind of born and bred in the state of Oregon. I've been able to travel a lot of places, but it was one of those situations of, as I think of it, I was kind of lucky enough to be born here, and I just kind of wanted to stay here. All through my childhood, I was always interested in martial arts. I was the kid who I had a subscription for a while to Black Belt magazine as a kid, and I mean, I would devour it, and I would put together notes, and I would have, buying lists of stuff I wanted to buy out of all the different articles and the ads. I can remember trying a lot of things as a young kid. I know I did a couple introductory lessons of Taekwondo and karate, and those were really the only things that were offered in Central Oregon at that time. Later on, that kind of fell by the wayside for me in middle school. So our kind of grades 6 through 8, I picked up with sport wrestling, kind of that, what we call over here, the collegiate style of freestyle wrestling. Picked up with that, ran with that for a couple of years, became a musician, and that kind of took over for me in high school. And so it was having that choice of I can continue to wrestle or I can play music, and I went with music. Then getting into, right at the end of my high school career, I got into the local community college, and I actually did a couple of years of Yang style Tai Chi.
Wow.
And that was wonderful because everything else up to then had been this, hard hitting, that was sort of my idea of martial arts. I still, to this day, I will devour Kung Fu movies, whether they're good movies, bad movies, anything. And so I always had this mental image of, the martial arts master. And so to go in and take this Tai Chi class where everything very much slowed down, and at first being the stereotypical impatient American kid, I was like, yeah, no, when do we learn how to fight? And my teacher was very nice, and she kind of put that question off for a little bit. And then one day kind of did the, okay, like, let's go ahead. And, straight out of a movie, it was me trying to throw things that I knew at her, and her just consistently either deflecting or pushing me halfway across the room. And, I'm 6 feet, so almost 2 meters tall. And she was I think her head came up to about my shoulder.
Yeah.
And so that was the eye opener of going, oh, okay. So unfortunately, then I went off to the University of Oregon for my undergraduate in medieval studies. And while I was there, I actually stumbled into historical European martial arts. I needed one more credit to be a full-time student and have my student aid package kick in. And there was a PE class called Italian Longsword, taught
Oh,
by Maestro Sean Hayes over in Eugene. And I said, yeah, sure, why not? Let's do this. This will be kind of cool. I've always wanted to do the night thing. And I showed up on the first day, and he handed me one of the wooden wasters, the wooden swords that we were using. And something in my head just clicked and said, yeah, this is it. And so I studied with Maestro Hayes in Eugene, studying Armizare, so the art of Fiore de Liberi. Mostly that. We dabbled a little bit into I-33, sword and buckler, some other things, but it was almost always just Fiore. And then on the side of that, I also started taking lessons from Maestro Hayes in classical Italian fencing, classical Italian foil specifically, which was wonderful because it helped build this giant background knowledge that was lacking from Fiore. If I had just gone into that, I would miss all of this stuff. So being able to kind of come at this thing as a martial artist from these two distinct points, one very medieval, one very, very modern, was really helpful. And then after college, I wound up moving up to Portland for a few years, came back to Bend, did my graduate studies in education, went and taught elementary school for 7 years, and I'm now, actually next month, moving on to become a building director for a local nonprofit that's going to be helping kids with emotional regulation and things like that.
interesting.
Yeah, it is fascinating, and it's fun how, again, worlds collide, where I have this big background in martial arts, and now I get to turn around and talk to kids about emotional regulation, and a lot of it is using the same techniques and the same things that I've learned over the years to kind of help, especially breathing techniques to help calm yourself.
Is it part of special education for kids with problems or something like that, or just for any type of kid?
It's for any type of kid. So
Okay.
it's specifically the organization looks at kind of hitting that gap where we look at the kids in our community and we say, okay, you have emotional needs that are not being met for whatever reason. You're not high enough risk to be special education.
Yeah.
And the teachers in the classroom trying to teach emotional regulation and academics, one of those always kind of has to suffer. So our job is to sort of, I think our job is to sort of take the emotional regulation piece off the teacher's plate and say, we'll handle this part, you handle the academics.
Okay, I understand that. Okay, well, great. Thank you very much. And Sean, would you like to say something about yourself?
Yeah, I don't quite have the background that Alex does there. I am very much a layman and a high school dropout. My martial arts history, though, started in middle school. I got introduced to some Taekwondo and karate. I liked it, but it didn't stick. And I was fortunate enough to have a benefactor at the church. I grew up Catholic and was an altar boy. And a gentleman who was a judoka took interest in, like, dude, if you want to do this, it's on me. My only condition is you have to get a black belt or else you need to pay me back. I don't have that black belt, but it's been quite a long time since I've been back, and I don't have any intention of paying him back. So I will get that black belt someday, I promise. But I did that for 5 years. I ended up quitting in high school due to some conflicts with a program I was doing. It was a Japanese exchange with my high school band. It just fell apart, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And then I basically took a long hiatus from martial arts, went through some wandering, got into some trouble, and and in that interregnum, I heard about HEMA. through actually someone who you've had on here, through Arma and John Clements. That was my introduction to it very early on, about a decade ago, but I didn't participate. It was about 6 years ago. I got with Alex, actually. It was a couple years after incident where I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, almost died. It was a really big traumatic event in my life. And I'm like, I need to get my stuff together. And HEMA solved a couple of problems for me. One, I have a wandering mind. As you heard, I'm a college dropout, so I have that mind. Academics is something I aspire to and admire, and try to hold it as a personal model to work toward for what is now my own research coinciding with Alex. I started as a student, and I just happened to be nerd enough to be able to now be helping to teach and doing my own independent research.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, let's go to, I mean, HEMA or Western martial arts. I know that there are some discussions on that. We don't want to get on that road, right?
Yeah.
Whatever, right? And so let us just, I know, talk about some weapons you teach. That's the best thing to start with. What type of weapons do you teach?
So about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I started High Desert Armizare here in Central Oregon. And my focus at that time was Fiore. So I was using longsword, the dagger, the rondel daggers, pole arms, things like that. And over time, I got more and more eclectic. So I would start bringing in some drills and some things where we would do some work from, stuff I had learned from Damon Stiff with the Mathreg stick fighting, or with Russ Mitchell and the Hungarians. I mean, honestly, the people you've interviewed is kind of a who's who of stuff I've lifted from, including yourself. I've pulled some Rasmus Farr drills and done that. And I kind of gradually realized that I was slowly teaching a more conceptual model than I was one specific art. So saying, oh yeah, I teach Fiore or I teach longsword wasn't really true anymore. And that was, again, one of the nice resets with COVID, was that I could take a step back and go, okay, what do I really want to do going forward? And it just so happens that right before COVID, it had been brought to my attention, I brought it to Sean's attention, a 19th century manuscript on the great stick. So one of these, this is one of our trainers, it's rattan, comes up to about armpit level. And it was the work of
French baton, similar to the French baton.
French baton.
Play of the 19th century.
Okay, to our Japanese viewers, this is like Joe, guys. Okay.
No, exactly. It's almost the exact same height as a Joe.
Exactly.
And in fact, for training, that was where I was looking at a lot, was just picking up some Joes for it. And then we found some rattan, which was a little bit less expensive. So during COVID, Sean especially really took off studying and delving in deep to cherry. And one of the right realizations he had and convinced me of it was that the stick makes a wonderful beginning weapon for learning a two-handed system. It teaches you the basics of moving with a two-handed weapon. Giuseppe Cherry, he name drops at least one, medieval Renaissance historical master who taught the two-handed sword. So even he was making the connections back there. And so that's the primary thing that we teach right now, is the great stick. The other weapon that we've been looking at is the 17th through 19th century small sword.
Wow.
So kind of some of the precursors to today's modern foils and epées.
Yes.
And for that one, I can directly thank Jim Emmons. He's the one that kind of got me onto it with an English manuscript by Zach Wilde, who teaches small sword, the cutting broadsword, and a quarterstaff.
Jim is an excellent instructor,
Jim is one of my favorite people on the planet. And usually when Jim starts talking to me about something like small sword, eventually I listen.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead, please. I didn't want to interrupt you. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, it's okay. So that's the two primary weapons that we teach right now, are the great stick and the small sword. Realistically, as we get started going, as I said, I'm pulling more towards a big conceptual idea. So doing Georgian sword and buckler with Mike Sherba, you know, I can pull those lessons, and I'm pulling those lessons into more single-handed stick, kind of as a curriculum that I'm getting ready to develop, where it's, okay, so now we've talked about the big two-handed cutty thing. We've talked about the one-handed stabby pokey thing. Now let's talk about a one-handed cutty slashy thing.
Yeah.
And then getting back into pole arms, and both cutting and stabbing pole arms with spears. Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, do you also do armored combat? And one difference, if I may say so, in Europe, few people have armor. In the US, many people have armor. You know, that's the difference between the US and Europe, right?
Yeah. Well, so when I was doing Fiore almost exclusively, I was able to get out to a couple of great events. WMAW in 2007, and then there was an event called the 600th. It was in 2009. It was the 600th anniversary of Fiore having written down at least one of the copies of the manuscript that we have. And in both those instances, I was able to participate in armored combat. Most of it was borrowed armor, you know, just finding stuff that people had that fit me. Now, that was the way that I started going, and then a combination of, honestly, finances to be able to afford armor. I am not somebody who can make this stuff myself. You know, the essence of my skills is I can take a square piece of wood and make it vaguely round. Yeah, that's all I can do.
That's the hallmark of the rich knightly class for a reason. In that respect, you know, it's
the same here in Europe. Many people cannot afford an armor.
Right.
That's
and
it.
So and I think one big switch for me was realizing that my own personal drive to fight in armor just wasn't there anymore.
Okay.
It was sort of it was a fun thing. I did it a couple times, enough to go, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, no, this is what I love to do. I still have, you know, good friends, Mike and some of the guys that train with him, Chase and Richard specifically. Like, I know they love armored combat. I can still talk that game with them. I have enough kit that I'll be able to go play with them when I can manage to travel over there again. But it's not my big drive anymore.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, I think, you know, just to have, I mean, I'm going to interview them soon. We had the Ukrainian armor maker, I mean, of us, I interviewed, but I'm going to interview soon many Russians. This is always a language thing, so we need interpreters. But in Russia, many fighters, there are many who have armor. The reason is they have investors and financial backers.
Absolutely.
Yes. You know, I talked to a guy, I mean, he didn't speak English, so we had an interpreter. I said, I mean, it's not for interview here, but I'm going to interview him soon. How many sets of armor do you have? And he's a really good armored fighter. He said, 11. I said, what? I have also a Persian armor. And I said, 11 sets of armor do you have? How did you finance that? And then he said, he's young, you know, he cannot be such a rich guy. And he said, and then the interpreter said, Manusha, may I say something? They have financial backers, right? So, you know, so, you know, and in our team, when someone, you know, has one set of armor, then he's so happy, she's so happy. And then someone, oh, I have this armor, that armor, you know, so.
And like, you know, for mine, I mean, the armor I have, so I have a hauberk of mail. So I have the mail coat, I have a good helm, and I have arms and gauntlets, and that's it.
Yeah.
That alone took me 10-ish years to just compile. And a lot of it was, you know, sort of sitting there where, you know, I think the mail was from Mike Sherba, and he had gotten that shirt and then was like, yeah, this is pretty good, but I want something styled a little differently. And so when he went to go buy the new one, I bought that one off of him.
Yeah.
Or the helm was a gift for my birthday from a bunch of our sword friends. Everybody pitched in and got me this helm.
Yeah.
No, I think that the hands are the only thing that I paid full price for, and that was way back in the day. So it's just 11 full suits of armor. Oh man.
Yeah.
I would love that. I would love like the Iron Man movies from, you know, Marvel.
You know, one thing I liked about him,
all of the armor is just like,
yes. hopefully I'm going to get him for this channel. This is because he's a funny guy, but we need an interpreter, of course. But the funny thing is, so European style, yeah, but not only, but also you have Japanese, Persian, Ottoman. So he has, he has. So just armor. And I said, so what do you fight with? He said, depends on, I just fight. I pick up an armor and go and fight, you know? And then the interesting thing is, you know, for us as researchers, it's always interesting to have different sets of armor to do research on. But for him, he's a fighter. I mean, then he does also MMA. So for him, it's just fighting aspect. And I just said, why do you have different types of armor? And he looked and said, because it's cool to have different types. It's not only European.
Because it looks cool.
Yeah, everyone is different. You see? Yeah, of course. It's like swords, you know, different types of swords.
It's cool.
Yeah. But swords you can at least afford. Armor is a different type of thing, right?
Yes.
You know, it's a different type, right? You know? Okay, yeah, so it's armored fighting. And do you, let's go to the weapons. So do you also teach longsword?
Not as much anymore. And part of it is trying to build a school community here again. You know, we've never been a huge school, which is great. It's never something that, you know, I've never really wanted that. I've never wanted the gigantic school feeling. It's more organic to me to be just kind of a small group of people. And recognizing that not everybody who gets into this is going to have the same kind of passion that we do. You know, they're not going to have that same drive where it's for me, if I miss a training session during the week, I can mentally feel it. Something isn't right. I have to, you know, come out to my backyard and hit the pell that I have in the back. I have to do something. I have to pursue this art. I can't not. But recognizing that for other people, it's just kind of a fun thing that they get to do on, you know, 1 day a week or 2 days a week, whenever they decide to show up. And so one of the thought processes was, okay, we have this stick system that can teach people how to use a longsword, you know, with a little bit of refinement that you'd need. But this is also a lot lower cost of entry.
Yes.
I mean, what did you just ordered from somebody?
Yeah, I just ordered 2 sticks. One of them I had cut into 2 batons, and that was like $15 for just the stick.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah. So you're getting $15, and for a lot of the solo drills, we can send students down to the local hardware stores and say, hey, go back toward their rakes and their shovels, pick up a rake handle, or replacement rake handle, $13 to $15. Bring that. You know, usually they need a little extra polish and sanding, but that'll work for this job.
Yes.
And so it's that low cost of entry that kind of keeps people, you know, gets people interested and keeps them coming. Because I know for me, it was a hard pill to swallow, even back in those days, where it was like, hey, this wooden sword is going to be $50. And I was a college student, and I wanted a wooden sword, and I saved up for that, and I actually still have it. It doesn't get used anymore. It just kind of sits in the rack, but I still have that sword. So, you know, it's sort of one of those of, can I teach longsword? Yes. And when somebody shows an interest in it, yes, we will teach it. But it's no longer kind of the primary tool that we use.
Yeah, it kind of goes through the whole universals in the conceptual way that we like to teach, in that we're learning to use levers of various lengths. And I mean, this is the length of, if I stand up, of basically Filippo Votti's description of a longsword and how long it should be. It should come up right underneath your arm, basically, like that.
Yes.
So, you know, and you're using it, and you're also using his rota, but, you know, he's 300-400 years in the past from the actual guy we're using, who has a much better description and system to follow. But ultimately, this stick is going to substitute for that sword. It'll just teach you the basics, but once you have that down, you can then refine it depending on the particular shape of that lever you're now using. Because this is just a round stick. A sword is a double-edged weapon or a single-edged weapon, and made of a different material. So it's going to behave slightly differently, and it requires just a slightly more nuance, but your base is all right here.
That's right. So it's very interesting approach you have and you present of conceptual martial arts, right? This is extremely important, especially, because I'm also next to Kyokushin, I'm also a wrestler and also for like 12, 13 years now, BJJ. And it's very interesting, for example, when you wrestle and you BJJ, especially in grappling, or you did judo, we know that, especially in grappling. I'm not saying in striking is not the case, but especially in grappling, the moment, for example, let's stick to BJJ or grappling. Imagine I am in a mount position and I want to do armbar, right? And I need to learn it in a conceptual way. In the beginning, beginners learn it. First, you raise it like that, then you put your knee here, then you go, and the guy doesn't let you do that, right? He's not going to sit there, right?
Yeah, it's this beautiful kind of learning process where, in the beginning, it's like, okay, here is the armbar. You need to get their arm straight. You need to be, have a grip here. You need to put rotation here. And you try it, and again, you're learning it, so you know what you're doing, your partner knows what you're doing, they're providing a little bit of pushback, but the goal is for you to be able to do that. Cool. And then you go and you roll into that kind of, okay, this is the more free play. I want to put an armbar on somebody who doesn't want an armbar put on them. And you're in the exact same mount position and you're trying it and it's harder, and you start to recognize that you have to change certain little details for yourself. The overall thing you're going for, the arm bar, is still the goal, but maybe instead of, I'll borrow your arm. Maybe instead of being able to put, my other hand right above his elbow, he's stronger than I am. So maybe I need to go up closer to the shoulder and get a roll in on the shoulder rather than being able to roll down here. Doesn't change the arm bar. This is still an arm bar. And then sort of the next fun from that is, cool, now it's switching positions. So I've learned how to do an armbar, to continue the BJJ analogy. Cool. I've learned to do an armbar from the mount. Now I'm in guard. How do I perform an armbar? Or now I'm in side mount. And so it's starting to recognize the ability to perform the specific techniques, the repertoire, the set distinct skills that you have, being able to apply them in these new combinations, these new ways, and in ways you never thought that you would be able to do.
That's right. Would you like to show us some of your techniques with this baton and these concepts you teach? Would you like to share this? With?
Let me go grab, I need to grab one other baton.
Sure.